Hi and welcome to another one of the Tech Geeks videos. Today we're going to be talking about the question, what do I need to run the UniFi Cloud Gateway Max? So the UCG-Max. The UCG-Max is this unit. This is an all-in-one. This is not to be confused with the UCG Ultra that looks pretty much identical to it. This one, the UCG Ultra, only runs UniFi Network. This one here, the Max model, will run all of them. What's that? That will run UniFi Gateway. So it will run the gateway, so be a router. It will do UniFi Network, UniFi Protect, UniFi Access, UniFi Identity. It will run UniFi Talk if you're in a region that supports that. So all of that can be run on this device. We've got plenty of other videos on what's truly in the box. Give you a quick rundown though, just so you know, you've got 2.5 gigabit a second Ethernet ports. One of those is designated as a WAN, but you can have two WANs running on this, so it'll do load balancing and failover. We've tested this on our iPerf. We've got a 10 gigabit a second iPerf test server here internally, and we could get about 1.7 to 1.8 gigabits a second through this device. And even with intrusion prevention, IDS turned on, again, it only dropped by about 100 meg a second. We have tested smart queues. Smart queues are not meant to run beyond about 300 meg a second as recommended when you hover over that image. But we again found that we could put the maximum port speed up to about a gig and it would run. Whether that will run with lots of load over it, but it gives you an idea of what this can actually perform. We've got cooling vents, like I've said, down the side. And what's our key thing? On this side, we have a NVMe slot for your hard drive. Now, depending on what model you've bought, you may have bought it already with one installed. The early releases just came with a 512 gig, but you could upgrade that again yourself. You get a quick release tool, here we go, there we go, in the box. And all we do is basically pop that into the slot, if I show you. All right, and out comes the drive. Oh. Here we go. So this one here we've actually upgraded. This one's got a Samsung 990 Pro Gen 4 drive in it. It's a 2 terabyte. There is a 4 terabyte version option as well, which again should work in this device quite happily. So let me just, let me just take that screw off so you can actually see the format of this drive that we're using here is a 2280. There is another format which is smaller and compact, and I have a suspicion it might fit in here, but we've never tested it. So let me just open up here the cover. All right, and there you go. There's our Samsung chip installed in there. If you wanted to upgrade this yourself, you can just undo this retaining screw here. All right, slide the whole module out and pop your new module in. Remember to do that when the power is off. So that is the basis of everything that we're going to talk about today in this device. I'm going to walk you through how to configure it, how to set it up, and a few of the questions that we get asked about performance, see how it works for speed, how the apps are there, and maybe a few other little bits and pieces if we have time for. We do have plenty of other videos over on our YouTube channel, so do subscribe and stay up to date there, as those might be useful as well. But hopefully let's probably now switch over to our computer because we're going to get that plugged in. I'm going to plug in our WAN to our internal test network here, and we're going to probably a second cable in due course to our second WAN, and we have two WANs in place that we can then use and do a failover test as well. So let's head on over to the computer and we'll take it from there.
Okay, so we just hopped onto my computer and we're going to continue some of this from here. But obviously the first thing to just think about is what is the whole suite, if you like, of applications that this can run. You see, UniFi has, or Ubiquiti has, a whole portfolio. We have UniFi Protect, which is the camera security. We have UniFi Network, which is access points, switching and router. We have UniFi Access, which is our door entry systems, and then we have things like UniFi Talk, which is a limited availability where I'm recording this, which is in Australia, but that's the telephone or the VoIP side of things. We've got Ubiquiti ID, so UID. All of these can actually be run from the Cloud Gateway Max that we're having a look at today. And so we're going to be running through some basics. We're going to adopt a camera into this. I'm going to drop an access point in it, which are probably the most common ones you're going to put in here, and it'll at least give you a show of how those bits start to work. Obviously, in the previous section of the video, I've showed you how to upgrade the memory, the onboard storage, and that storage is needed really for anything that you're going to record. So it's going to be stuff out of UniFi Access or UniFi Protect. Those are probably your key ones that you're going to use it for, your video storage and everything else as well. So as we move on now, let me just get everything ready. I'm going to do this with a couple of remote sessions to a couple of computers so I can show you. Hopefully we'll be able to go through everything from failover to actually setting up maybe some VLANs with some routing as well. This probably won't be a particularly short video, so if you are looking for certain segments of information, please do try and use the chapters portion of this if you're looking on YouTube, because it will really help you identify what you want. And then I won't have people moaning about how long the video is, but it's meant to show you what we can do out of this and everything that we can do with it as a sort of more fuller experience of everything that you can see. And so hopefully there might be some gold that you can find somewhere in this. So there are a number of ways to actually get the unit online and configured to start with. Look, there are a few things, and we'll get into the how to do it in a minute, but I just want to make sure we set the scene correctly here. If you have a broadband service of some type and you're going to replace your router with this, I would really strongly suggest you actually get this running connected to your current router. Internet service providers, ISPs, do have some system of caching and connecting current devices to your account. And that can take maybe 30 minutes. For some people, it can take an hour or a couple of hours for it to clear after you've had one of your other routers disconnected, or your old router disconnected. So getting this set up now probably will at least prove to you that it's all working and configured, and then you can remove your old router, plug this in. Remember, this has not got a ADSL or VDSL modem in it, so you do need to have a provision from your internet service provider that is Ethernet. It will do PPPoE, which is point-to-point protocol over Ethernet, something like that, which is an authentication protocol. The throughput does drop quite massively, maybe by about half when using PPPoE, so do be aware of that. A lot of internet service providers will provide you an IP address automatically over DHCP. Remember, even if you're given a static IP, it will generally be allocated to you by DHCP. All right, which sounds a little bit confusing, but the internet service provider will have locked the IP address to your connection, and so your device will still connect and request it automatically. That's if you've got a single IP. If you've got a range or a couple of IPs, then your provider will probably have given you a subnet and a gateway and a few other things to join. But if you've not got all of those, then you're going to just generally leave the unit in DHCP. So get this connected to a current router. It will make the life probably a lot easier. Then you know it's working. Then you can remove your old router and put this in place. So let me just run you through the setup that we've got. We're just going to put that, recorded a little bit earlier, we're just going to put that in the screen so you can just see it, record it through on my phone. Basically in our lab here, I've connected this up into the power. You can see our power adapter there. It is USB-C. You can see that plugged in. I've also got two cables plugged in. I've got a red one, which is going to be our WAN connection, and our brown one there, or grey connection, which is our LAN. We're going to add a second one of those later on to see how it works. Those have then been connected up to one of the Ubiquiti Max switches. We've got the red is going to a 10 gig connection, and the LAN port is going, which is the grey cable, is going up to a 2.5 gigabit a second port. So as a start, we're better do full speed test. You can really see how we do this on our test rig and see actually how the performance is. So that's how we've rigged that up. Later on, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding a wireless access point. We're using a Ubiquiti U7 outdoor access point. And we're going to add in there a G5 Flex camera so that we can get both the Protect and the network side of things running for you. And you'll see there also we're going to be using these PoE injectors because the switch we've got here is just a non-PoE. So we're going to use some PoE injectors to give us some power in the setup. So that hopefully should give us all of the components to at least show you how that out of the box we can get this functioning and working. All right, so there are a number of ways to initially set this up. You can do this directly connected with a web browser. I like just doing the initial stage here using the Ubiquiti UniFi app on my smartphone. So you need to go and get Unifi Network from your app store of choice and install that. You'll also need an account at UI or Unifi, unifi.ui.com. This is where your controller is going to live and be managed. When you log into something like that, it will actually show you all the controllers that you manage, and you can maybe have one for an office and one for a home. And if we get a chance, I'll just show you a bit of how that works later on in the video as well. So firstly, you need to make sure you've got that unifi.ui.com account and you've got the app installed on your phone or your iPad or whatever you're using, and you've got it logged in. Now you can do this from a web browser as well, and I'll show you the basics of that. We're going to switch to the web browser to give us more functionality in due course. So what you can do here is you'll find that once you've logged on to the app, we're going to power everything else up. Now, you will have just seen on the screen a moment ago that the screen looks blank. Now, it has actually been running for an hour and a half, and some people notice this and think the unit's faulty. By default, out of the box, it runs on nighttime mode, which means I think it's between like 8 and 8 o'clock. It turns that screen off. So you can change that later, and we'll look in the settings, but don't think the unit or the LCD screen is faulty. That is built into the device. So the first time you power it up and you start up that UniFi app, you'll get this showing on the screen. It says it's ready to adopt, and so what we're going to do is we're just going to accept that. All right, and it's just going to go through the pre-config. All this is really doing is this is adding it to your controller in the cloud. So you can do this all locally, but most of this will work if you're going to connect this to unifi.ui.com, because that is the location where you can have remote access to this. This is why I like to get this done now, because then I know it has connected to the internet. So you can see there that I've gone through. It takes a few seconds or so to actually run to where it needs to, and so you'll then see the final setup screen, and it is done. So once it's set up at this stage, you can go on. I can just show you there just briefly some of the screens. You can look at what the device is doing. You can go in there to settings, and you can set most of the stuff up, like your Wi-Fi networks and your routing and everything. And if you want to do that in the app, that's probably a good place to start as well. But when we want to add all of the other devices or all the other applications, it is a lot easier to do this directly in the web browser, and so that's where we're going to move to now. So you'll need to now connect a computer to the LAN side. I've already got a cable in there because I connected to it to a switch, but you could connect this to a computer, your laptop, or a network switch, and have something else connected to it. That's probably my preferred way of getting this next stage done. So let's get your device set up. That's what we're going to have here. Now, by default, this is going to have an IP address. Let's just grab one of my windows here that I've got. It's going to give you an IP address in this range, 192.168.1. Now, if you're connecting this to a current router or something that you own, it's highly likely that it will already have that IP address range on its LAN side. So that will actually make this look like it's not working. So we will need to change that if you're going to use another router, and I'll show you where we're going to change that in a moment as well. So do be aware of that. So that's not going to stop us getting past this stage, but it will mean that we do need to make an extra step before you can get internet access. So that's why it's really important to be able to plug on that local side. Now, you could choose to carry that on if you like with the app, and that might be useful for you as another way around it, but we'll continue all of this here on the computer itself. So start up a web browser. You need to check that your network card's on what's called DHCP. It probably will be by standard. If you're not sure, you can get to a command line a command prompt. So you can come down into your Windows if you're doing this on Windows and just type CMD and hit enter. All right, and a box is going to come up. You can type ipconfig. This will show you what network cards you've got and the IP addresses. And you should be looking for something like this. You should have 192.168.1. something as your IP address. Your gateway is the IP address of the server. That's what we're actually going to be going to. It's not the server, but the actual router itself. That's what we're going to be going to actually configure this. So once we know this IP address, or it's confirmed, then we just need to go into a web browser, and that's going to be our location to go to. So at this point we can just do put the IP address that we saw there as the router IP address, and we're going to get to this page. Now don't be alarmed, this is what's called a self-signed certificate. It's still secure, it's still encrypted, you're actually in control of it and you're on the local network. So we need to get past this screen. Your web browser will have an option that says advanced or exception or something. You'll need to click on it and say, I understand, I'm continuing, it could be unsafe. It's not, because you're directly connecting to it. So at this point, it should ask you for some details on how to actually set up or log in what's going on with the device. Because we set this up using the app, this will have automatically created a username and password that links or is the same as your unifi.ui.com account. What we'll do a little bit later is add in a local account so that we can get back into this if we need to at a later stage. But what I'm just going to do now is I'm just going to log in with the details that you may have used, or the details you will have used. So this one was linked to our main account. All right, so we can now hopefully sign into this account. It's probably going to ask for this as a one-time that you would have set up, and then you can log in. So this is essentially the area that you're going to get to. If you've not done this, and we've actually done this once on a test bed, so you'll probably find that most of these show as update needed, or in fact this one's come up with an update needed. So we will run through all of the options in here. Like I said, do use the chapters of this video. There might be a little bit more in here than you want. You may know a lot of this already. I'm trying to do this as a basic, just give you an idea of everything that I'm working on and how it all fits together as well. So what I'm going to concentrate on first really is going to be around our applications and then our admin users. And we'll just go down these settings as we go along. So my first thing here, obviously you can see over here we have the option to turn dark mode on and off. If you like dark mode, that's cool for you. User is your currently logged in user, and you can change your details there. Remember, this is also linked to unifi.ui.com, and maybe that's an appropriate time. Let me just see if I can make this as a way that I can show you what we have here. So if we go to Unifi, unifi.ui.com. So this is where you can get at your device remotely. You don't have to be on the local network. At the moment, we're setting it up connected to the LAN interface, one of the LAN interfaces. But later on, you might want to do this while you're out and about, or maybe you're at the office or wherever, or you're doing a friend's one of these. And you can manage it from unifi.ui.com if you've set it up in this way. So you'll log in exactly the same way as we did for the device itself. There we go. Let's log in here. It's going to ask probably for another one-time password. All right, now once we've logged in here, we've got a lot of these, so you'll see quite a few of these have been grayed out. Obviously because we've got lots of different customers in here, but these could have been lots of different ones that were relating for who you were or who you managed. And in our instance here, you can see our Cloud Gateway Max and the connection it's on. If I wanted to now actually remotely access this, I'd be able to click on it, and it'll actually essentially log us in and give us exactly the same screen as we see here. This is Ubiquiti's central management system. Allows us to do everything that we want to with it. There are a few features that you need to use logged in locally with a local account, potentially format hard drives and a few other bits and pieces like that. So that's what unifi.ui.com does. Allows you to have multiple of these. If you have, like I said, some of these at office or family places like that, at different houses, then you can again use all of this as a central place to get access for everything that you set up. Change your SSIDs, change anything that relates to this view, remote view your footage, which we'll do with the Protect side of things later as well. All right, so we'll concentrate using this screen here. At this moment in time, I'm just going to look at this page as a starting point. All right, so I'm just going to be concentrating on Ubiquiti Network, the UniFi Network side of things, because that's what we're setting up. We can look at the end, or I may be able to do a separate video on just if you've got current settings and you want to import them in. We'll probably see if we can add that in as well. So if you want to, and probably what you want to start doing, whatever you've got going, is to at least get an update running on here. Now, just to try and help you understand how this works, the actual Cloud Gateway Max is a physical piece of hardware, and on it, if you want to think of it as this terms, it's got lots of different virtual devices, and each one of those virtual devices, if you like, runs one of these. So we want to just separate our thinking slightly. So we've got our operating system, if you like to think of it as your Mac or your Windows operating system, and then each one of these might be a different application like Excel or Word or Adobe Premiere Pro or something else that you use. We're making a choice. Do we want the operating system update automatically or the applications update automatically? Actually, what I like to do here is have the operating system update automatically, because that's the carrier of all of this. The applications I don't always set to update. The reason being that the applications control all of those devices that we have, whether it be a router, a switch, whether it be an access point or a camera. And sometimes some of those updates aren't as helpful as I want them to be. So I don't want to push those network changes directly. So in my instance, and you might do it differently, I like just the main operating system to stay up to date and that to be patched. And you can choose when it wants to go and do that check. Remember, in many of these instances, if you have the application, it will go through and reboot a lot of the devices. So you can then choose, and we can choose on here, well, actually part of our setup we're going to also have is we're going to have Unifi Protect running. So I've set the install running, so as we go through this, we will actually be able to see some of those bits as well, and be able to work through those as we go along. So we'll let that continue on and do everything it wants to, and we're going to move on to this admin and users section. The admin and users section, again, this controls the access to this device generally from our unifi.ui.com account. So if you've got other users that you want to have access to this, and it's great later on to do this for Unifi Protect. When you do the cameras, you might want somebody to only have access to 2 or 3 of the cameras, maybe for a front door or something like that, but you want to keep the privacy on some of the other cameras, so you can create multiple users. You can create groups in here and everything else that you want and how you want those permissions to go, and to use Unifi Identity if you're using Unifi Access. My key thing that I want to do in here is add a local user, but the principle is the same. So let me show you. You can choose Add User. And if they've already got a unifi.ui.com account, then you're going to add those in here, and you don't need to tick this box, and you can give them the role for it. So it's a friend or a family member, you want to be able to access this box, then you can do it. In my instance, I'm going to be changing this to a local user. So this local user can actually log in without, so if this device you don't want to centrally manage, you want it to be separate from the internet for some reason, or you want to be able to make sure that even if you lock yourself out by accident of your unifi.ui.com account, you can fully access this without having to try and work out how to reset that. So I'm just going to put this, and so set this up, must contain at least an uppercase character, so let's put alright, so there we go, and it must contain a number. There we go. So there's my password in there. Wasn't it very exciting? Alright, I've restricted it. I've given it super admin access to the device. And now I've added that in. All right, and we've got our user added in here. And we've now added ourselves a level of security to be able to come back and log into this if we get locked out in one of the other accounts. And we now also have local access where we can do things like format the hard drive and a few other features that are maybe locked otherwise. Our UniFi devices, it hasn't found anything. We don't need to worry about that at the moment. Our console settings, these are our basic console settings and our starting point. So this is our name. We could call this, you know, whatever you want it to. We'll leave it set as this for the minute. But that's where we can start with some of our naming. Backup is obviously a useful thing. Our time zones being picked up correctly. Now, in those early stages, we talked about the fact of the screen. And the screen actually being off between a period of time. So actually it's 10 o'clock at night to 8 in the morning. So I'm going to turn that feature off because I want the screen to be showing all of the time. And then we've got some other options in here. Do we want SSH access? Those are advanced features I'm probably not going to cover yet. And you might want analytics or whatever running in there as well. There are options to take ownership, and factory default take ownership allows you to grab this from somebody else. Factory reset obviously is going to put this back to its original factory settings. Then you've got your map. This is UniFi Inner Space, I think it's called, and you can put this in for your diagrams and everything, and make sure your access and mapping is done right for where your access points and everything are, if that's useful for you. Our system log, again, it's just going to show you everything that's going on in the box when we've started it, when we've made changes. And our storage, our other key thing to check here is, again, that it's got recognized. You saw earlier in the video, we updated this to have a 2 terabyte drive in it. This has been factory reset, so we'll have some old footage. So I'm just going to choose the option to reformat this. This is not going to get rid of our settings for any of the applications. Those are held within inside the device itself. This is all about the storage of footage and things like that. So this is just resetting that storage point. You can see that we've installed, like I said, a Samsung 990 Pro in there, and the size shows how long it's been running for, and we can let that run through. So that, if you like, is our first state. That's what we're doing in our OS settings. We can go to applications. We can see that all of these options here are in a ready to go state. We can start them up if we want to, and those will actually be ready. And we've got plenty of others along here if we want to actually join these up later on as well. So that's our first pass through. I want to like to get the console in a place that it's usable, and I've got those main features running, the time and everything else, like I showed you, in the format that I like. And that gives us a great starting point to then build and know that we can get all the applications set up correctly after that. Okay, so we've gone through all the console settings. Now it's time to probably start to the next one, which for me is UniFi Network. UniFi Network, as I've said many times before, this is about your routing, this is about your access points and your switches. The Cloud Gateway Max is a router. It doesn't have a wireless access point built in it, but it has all the other features built in. So we're going to come to our network setting, our network icon here, and this is the UniFi Network controller built into this. So this gives us, there's quite a lot of settings to think through and many features that we can set or not set on this. So as our starting point, we're just going to make sure we've got the basics running. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the speed side of things so I can show you how well this performs, and we'll run through some of these menus that are here. We don't have any other devices other than itself installed at the moment. And so we're actually going to, in due course, we're going to add an access point so you can see how simple that is to actually get this all created and set up. So for me, a starting point really is obviously settings, and I like to see what's actually happening. We can't do the Wi-Fi yet because we haven't actually got a access point enabled or added to the network, but we can look at our networks. So this is our first stage. If we've got this connected to another router, our first point here may be to change this IP range and actually to bring it all into line with what we want. So we can actually just click on this and we can make the changes that we want. So if you wanted to change this IP address, we're going to just tune this away from auto scale. And maybe you're going to change this to an IP range that's different to what your current router is. Remember, this is going to disconnect your local computer. And then it's going to need to reconnect when it gets a new IP address. We can choose how big that subnet is and how large it is. We can scale this on if you want to here, all right, and it will actually make this bigger and bigger and show you how many usable IP addresses. Generally, many days, not that long ago, 255 IPs on your network would be ample. Now, if we're doing this even in a home scenario with lots of Internet of Things, light bulbs and things like that, we soon burn through those IPs. So you may want to consider moving this to at least 500 IPs, which we can do there, and that will give you some good benefit of growth inside your network. You can do your IPv6 if you want. But this is probably a good starting point. What this will do is this will change your router's gateway IP address, the IP that you connect to, all right? And we would need to reconnect at that point. So I'm going to actually apply this change so that we can follow it through. You do have some options here for manual if you want to change any of the things in here. At the moment, we will come back and look at content filtering and things shortly and show you actually how all of that works. So I'm going to choose apply. This is going to change the IP address of the device, and it's probably going to drop this window out from working. But let's just have a little look and see what's going to happen. So I've applied this change here. All right, and so I'm not sure whether I will yet. I've lost access to this device. So I'm just going to bring up the actual server behind it so I can still get to this and show you what's actually happening. There we go. That session hopefully will restart in a moment. But let me take you to the server that's here and grab this one of these windows, one of these ones here, this one here. So hopefully, there we go. We can move this out of the way for a minute, and that will hopefully reboot us and connect us in a minute. So like I said, I'm having to do this on another remote machine so you can actually see how this is running. So you can see that this has still got 192.168.1 IP address. This will, you've got two options. You can either disconnect the physical card to allow it to redo, or we can do ipconfig/renew, and this will go and tell the machine to get a new IP address because we've changed that IP. Now, if you don't have any other routers to connect it to, you don't need to do this part. This is just another piece of information for you that maybe often people find as troubleshooting to get through some problems where they have a router that they're connecting to that already has that IP range. You can see here it has now got a new IP in the correct range again, and we should be off and running. So all I need to now do is just wait for my other session to restart. So let me just start that session up again. Oops. All right, so I'm just going to now reconnect to that device. Obviously, you don't have to do that if you're local. You won't see this dropping in and out like this. So we've changed the IP address. If you're not quite sure, obviously, what the new router IP address is, use that same command that we did before, arrow up, if you want to remember all the commands. They just keep going through those if you use the arrow up. You'll see now it's moved its IP address to 11.1. So now all we need to do is again put 11.1 in the web browser and continue back in, or we could have gone to unifi.ui.com, and that could have been our single simple place to be able to do this. All right, so let's just grab our password information and do our normal login. So these are the invasive bits. These are the bits that we have to get right at this starting point, because once we've got them right, then from them we should be able to move on fairly quickly and not do these bits again. All right, so there's our dark mode. We don't need to worry about that. All our applications are up to date, and we can come back to our item here for Unifi Network, and we can take ourselves back into settings because we can breathe a slight sigh of relief because we have changed this IP address. Obviously, if you didn't need to do that, you didn't need to go through that pain. So now that we've changed this and we've got this right, this is still the worthwhile page just to check and keep ourselves running on. So here, everything is set up as we want. We can create, and we'll probably come back to this a little bit later on, a virtual network, and maybe just talk about that slightly a little bit later on in the video. All right, and there's a few other settings here that may or may not be of use to you. So remember, this is where we made our changes. Our IP range is changed. If we wanted to enable specific things on here, then we could do, but in this instance I'm not really going to worry about that too much because the defaults are all that we need. So our internet connection we will add a second one to later, but this is where you're going to set up. Generally it will probably be as DHCP. You can rename this to whatever you'd like this to be. So we have this on Aussie, so maybe I'll rename that. Expected speeds, that can be whatever you want. It will have sped tested as you saw when we did the original config. So you can actually rate limit these. It's only to help it. It does a regular performance check and it'll just tell you whether it think it's running a little bit lower or not. So then we can look on manual if we wanted to. Smart queues, do some performance changes to how things run. Do read up a bit more if you want that. On this device, it will limit the device to about 1 gigabit a second. So some of those won't be useful, or maybe you don't need to worry about. DNS server, it can be auto. That's what it's going to pick up often from your internet service provider. I generally, as a personal choice, like to make this as a manual setting. So this uses Google's. All right, and I know that I have some level of control over that. So I'm just going to apply that change. All right, and that is my Aussie broadband connection set up how I want it to be. We'll look at the extra connection in there later. That goes into port 4, and that's how that bit works. All right, so second WAN is disconnected, and this is where we can do some failover, which we'll have a look at later. If you want automatic speed test done, then you can set that, and it will actually do it at a certain time for you every morning, if you want to, and it'll give you an idea of how it thinks it's performing. So this is our starting point. I'm going to jump down quickly through the other items, and then we're just going to show you some speed test changes, and then we can start talking a little bit more about network. VPN I'm not going to cover in this video. That's for connecting either inbound or outbound to other devices. Security we will come back to and do a little bit on in a moment. Routing, you can have specific routes in here. If it doesn't mean anything to you, then I wouldn't worry about it at this moment in time. It's probably something you don't need to worry about, and the defaults will do. Profiles we can set up for Wi-Fi and for physical networks. We can rate limit the speed or the ports, and this is good maybe if you're sharing this with another property. Maybe you've got a bridge to that other property, and what you want to do is restrict so that nobody can overload that. You can create a Wi-Fi speed profile and then assign users to it. We'll see if we get a chance to get to that later on in this video as well. And then system here. System is really just, again, what's the clock that you want to do? I like that having 24 hours. Updates, how often do you want it to check to updates? Do you want it to do early access ones? Do you want to schedule these? Again, probably leaving these as the default is fine. The auto backups is all that's needed there. And in advanced, there are some few features in here that you can actually turn on that might be relevant for you or might not be. Those bits are there if you are using this in a public environment and you want other devices to connect to it or change the IP. That's probably one of the ones that's commonly used. But again, there's some features in there that you will probably learn as you go along and not initial side of configuring this. So that up until this point is the most significant parts of this portion of the setup, and I just want to talk to you about some speed and some interfaces now again in the next video. Once we've got all of those settings how we want them to do, probably just going to talk to you about one of the other questions we get asked a lot about is our speed tests, and I just want to talk through a couple of things that we've noticed in this as well. Sometimes we found, depending on what you're connected to, the actual interface of the device doesn't always synchronize at 2.5 gigabits a second. If you've got an upstream switch, do check if you do a performance test and it's running slower than you expect it to be, then it could be because you need to tell that switch that it's going to connect at 2.5 gigabits a second. So we're going to just show you some of the speed test options that, as we've seen out of the box. So we're in UniFi Network. We've chosen devices. We can see our device that's here, and we can choose this. This gives us our interfaces. what you're really looking to see is this actually showing at 2.5 gigabits a second on your LAN port and your WAN port. If it's not, then there are some options in your port manager here that we can actually hard code this. So here's our port, and we can change this and actually physically set this to be 2.5 gigabits a second. You might have to do that on your switch at the other end, but we found in a couple of instances out the box, these devices didn't pick this up and were only to do this at 1 gig. So we've got basically both of these ports set at the maximum speed that they can. They're both connected here at 2.5 gigabits a second, as you can see. So we've got a test server that can run at 10 gigabits a second. So if we just jump in here, we're going to run this iPerf test. All right, and you can see this iPerf test. We're seeing 1.8 gigabits a second, 1.6 gigabits a second, 1.7, 1.7, 1.87, 1.81. All right, so we're seeing a good solid throughput there that's well faster than our actual internet connection. Our internet connection is a 1 gig Aussie broadband. But we can see that this device can truly do much faster than that, which is a really good speed. Now, some people want to know what happens maybe if we turn on some of the security services. Those are some of the features that do hit it. So if we go to security now here, we can turn on, to start with, our intrusion prevention. We can turn that to automatic. Or maybe we just push this straight to advanced and we put this onto high sensitivity and save those changes. We would normally expect there to be a little bit of a performance hit on that because the device itself is actually now needing to do some physical interaction with each one of those packets. So let's run our speed test again and just see whether that drops down. So we can actually see, no, we still got a 1.7, a 1.9, a 1.7, a 1.8. So we're actually at this moment in time not really seeing any performance difference on this. Maybe we're losing maybe about 100 megasecond. It will depend, obviously, the more users, the more load, that will have some significant impact on what's actually happening. But we have turned this on to a fairly high setting there. We'll come back round and look at some of the firewall rules again for you shortly, a little bit later in this video. You will remember we had, though, on our internet connection, I think it was here, no, it was actually on our LAN when we set the networks up, the option here to turn on in manual, to turn on some content filtering. So there are some profiles that are already defined, which we can have a look at in a little bit, but we'll probably maybe turn this on to a family one. I just want to again just see, is there anything happening here of performance and speed differences? So now we've turned that on, we can come back and we can actually do this again, run our test through. Have we dropped a little bit? 1.2, 1.6, 1.5, 1.7, 1.2, 1.6. So we are again seeing probably a little bit of a drop off of maybe about another 100 megasecond. We're averaging, about 100 megasecond difference because we are seeing changes in, again, what we're having to do with monitor of the packets. So that's one of the things we get often asked, what does this perform? Do we see results change as we reduce it? So there you do. So hopefully that's useful at this section. And then we'll have a little bit look at some of the main sections as we run through now and answer some more of your questions as we go. Okay, so now we've had a look at some of that initial bit. I want to just now work through all the rest of the settings so that we get this right in the way that we want it to. So I'm just going to revert back those few settings that we did under networking. We had manual here. We're going to turn that back to automatic, which will take off our family setting. And I will come back into security. We can look at these bits in a little bit later on, but I just want to put this back to where it was before, so that we have everything as we need it. So let me just give you a little bit of orientation around it. We're going to add an access point and we're going to then build it from here. So on our dashboard gives us an overview of what's actually happening, what applications it's aware of, what it can see going through it, the most active components. Obviously, I've only got one device connected. I can log in and look at information about this device, which is really useful. I can set policies and profiles to it. Now, the IP addresses and everything I can fix and change if I want to. I can set a fixed IP address to it and assign it. which will then update our DHCP server. So each time this computer actually asks for an IP, it would always get the same one. So there's some quite clever things that can be done with that, and you can probably grow your understanding as you go along. We then got the topology. This shows you basically how it's connected, which isn't really exciting at this point in time. We've literally got a workbench, the Cloud Gateway Max, and Aussie Broadband. But as you add other devices, those will appear. Then we've got our UniFi devices. This is probably our most interesting or most useful. This is where we're going to add our access point and adopt it shortly to the setup. And any other things that we have, like switches or anything else that we get added in. Our clients are our clients' devices. Now, on each of these views, I know I'm going through fairly quickly, you can actually choose this slider on here, and you can choose columns, and you can add in some information that might be extra useful for you. A MAC address in there. You can also see things like transfer rate and received rate if you're wanting to try and diagnose maybe some problems that are happening on this. Then as we now scroll over, we do have a set of extra columns appear here, which is great if you wanted to see how Wi-Fi is going or anything else like that. It'll also show you what Wi-Fi device it's connected to. Then we have a switch ports manager. Please, this can get a little bit confusing if you've got switches in here as well, because it's literally going to show you all of the ports that you've got across all of those devices. But we've only got a Cloud Gateway Max, so it's very simple and easy to see the 5 ports that we've got in that setting. Insights is just going to give you a little bit of an idea of what's going on in your traffic and how your network and how it's all going. So it's quite useful. And then obviously we've got our logs down here of everything that's going on in here. Admin, client activity. You want to see when things logged on and what speed and things like that were happening. So that's useful. And then obviously we've still got our settings that we started in. So what I'm actually going to go and do now is I'm actually going to plug in an access point. So I'm going to cable that in. I'm going to use a PoE injector. So as you can see, I'm going to just walk it through on the screen here for you. We're actually plugging that in. So I'm going to be putting that into port 2. Port 2 is going to go into my PoE injector. If I had a PoE switch, then I could have actually carried that onto the PoE switch and plugged it directly in. In this instance, I've got an injector. What does that do? It takes mains power from one side, takes LAN from another, joins the two together, and then gives us a PoE out, a power over Ethernet out, and that can go up to 100 meters. So we're just going to use the U7 outdoor and connect that. And obviously this could run from where I have my Cloud Gateway Max, and it could then run all the way out to the outside wall of my house up to 100 meters away if I wanted it to. So we're just going to plug all of those in now, and then as they come on in a moment, we're now going to be able to come back to devices, all right, and it's going to show us there that it's ready to be adopted, and we're going to be able to add it to the network. So now I've got everything connected up as it should be. If I come to devices here, I'll actually be able to see our U7, here it is, our U7 outdoor is actually showing in this setup. All right, and it is waiting because it's showing here as managed by another console. So this means I've actually taken it from somewhere else. So I actually got to factory default this to now be able to get this to work. So I'm just going to go and use the reset pin and actually then be able to reset this, and then we'll be able to do what's needed after that. So you already see that now it's started up. I've already had an alert appear on here telling me that it's ready to be adopted. We can see alerts appeared here. So if we come to UniFi devices, and we'll actually see it listed in here. So we now actually have the option to choose adopt. Now, if you're doing this with a network switch, just the conditions, just so you know, you need to make sure that that network switch is on the LAN segment of your Cloud Gateway Max. All right, it needs to be in the same IP range for this to all work. So I'm now just going to click on adopt. All right, and this is now going to go through. What does this do? It says actually adds it to the config. And if I'd added a second one, once I've set up Wi-Fi, which I'll show you in a moment, if I'd actually already set the Wi-Fi up, this would now also be pushing the Wi-Fi onto that device as well. All right, so while that continues to set up and get ready, it'll probably also give you an option to factory default it, or factory update it if the firmware is out of date as well. We should now be able to go to settings, and we should have now our Wi-Fi option enabled. So this is going to allow us to create our first Wi-Fi network. And do remember, so that by default, this is going to create a mesh, and in this definition of the word mesh, this is going to be a single SSID, so a single network name that is shared across multiple devices and multiple wireless access points. So as you add them, then what can happen is that you could have an outdoor access point, you could have a couple of indoor, and you'll move from one to the other, and your device will reconnect to whichever one is the closest. So I'm just going to start us by creating a network here. I'm going to just make it very simple in my instance. It doesn't need to because this is a test environment. All right, so let's just set it up like this. It's going to be across all networks. Now, there are various ways we can do this. We can either have a single IP address, which might be useful, or we can use private pre-shared keys, which we might have a look at in a little bit. This allows us to have multiple passwords, and each user or each person who logs on with that password can be put in a different network. So we'll probably run through that in a moment. You'd have the option for a hotspot portal. This is where a user, maybe you've got a holiday park or something like that, you can set this up so they authenticate and then are allowed through from there. You can have vouchers and other bits and pieces. Probably won't going to get into a lot of that. There are some add-on videos for those if you want to learn how that works. You could hide the Wi-Fi name if you want to. That'll be up to you. It doesn't make it any more secure by hiding it. Bandwidth, some people like to share and split out the frequencies. That's up to you. You can do that and create one with a different name. Client isolation, this means can each device see each other. So this is useful if you are doing this in a holiday environment or a guest house or something like that. That means that if I've got multiple users who are multiple different customers, if you like, when their device connects, they can't see somebody else who's got their device on the network as well. It does give you some issues if you're doing this in a home environment, because maybe you won't be able to see the printer, for instance, and sharing. So just do be careful how you use that. They've got this option, which helps the device work out where the access points are. You may choose to turn this off to start with and actually see how everything goes. It's probably a good starting point, and maybe then you can try that a little bit later on. We've got the options here for Wi-Fi limiting of speed, fast roaming. There are a few other options there that you can try to improve if you've got multiple access points, but those are things you can work on probably over time. So these are the basics. WPA2 is what we have set up in here. WPA2/3 might be okay if you've got access points that support that as well. And if you need this perfect, I think it's password, what is it? Yeah, protected management frames, which is part of WPA3. Then that might be an option for you. It's probably going to be in a more of a office environment as well. So that's my sort of default setting up for it. And if we were to hop back to devices now, this will send it also back into getting ready, and it's actually going to send that setup now to this device. And like I said, if I added in others as we went along, you'd see those appear in there as well. So that's our starting point for adding in a wireless access point, and we would follow that same process for switches or anything else that we did as well. So let's just see if that's actually got itself ready and fully updated now. So it's now up to date, and it's actually there now and broadcasting, and you can use this. Probably got my screen completely the best that I can here for everybody at the moment. Oh, it's because the other window has disappeared. Let me just quickly see if I can bring bring that one back again, just to make our viewing experience just that little bit better. Sorry about that. Just working on a smaller screen. Let's just run this one back again, and hopefully this will give us ability to just see it a little bit bigger. Here we go. All right, so on this screen here, we can obviously go in and have a look, and we've got various other bits and pieces that can show us some of the settings. We can change things. Is the radio mode that's on this. So if you notice when I did this one, I actually had 2 antennas on it. And so that's the Omni antenna. That gives me 360 degrees. We've got channel management. The more channels you have, essentially, the greater the throughput you can get, but it does impact the availability of channels as well. So there's a little bit there. That's learning stuff. I'm not probably going to be able to cover all in this video here, but you can change all of these in your 5 gigahertz here. We can bring this up to 160. 160 is really a good value if you can, and you have available frequencies to be able to do this, or channels. Mainly in the 5 gigahertz, you should be able to do this. This should allow, say, an outdoor access point like this. The U7 outdoor should be able to get about a gigasecond of speed with that enabled. So the wider the channel, here, the greater the throughput of speed. So you can change all of those settings. You can get then your insights into what's going on, what devices are connecting, how they can perform. So maybe if I just take 2 moments and now just see on my mobile phone here, let me just join it to the Tech Geeks Wi-Fi. Let's just see whether it can do this. Probably because it won't remember the password that I had before. There we go. So this has joined it. So in a moment, if we were to go to clients, there we go. So I've connected on here. You can see that I've managed to connect at Wi-Fi 6. And we can use some of those other options in here to get an idea of what transmit speed I've got. But we can always have a look and see what other options are in here. Technology, identity, down packets, up packets. So you can see that we've got quite a lot of useful information that we can add in here and have a look at as we went along, and signal strength and everything else that we can go. So we can actually see that's pretty good, and it's identified my phone there as well. So this gives us a good starting point to see what we're actually doing with it. We can click on this device. We can see, like I said, the frequencies, how many channels. This has not joined any additional channels together, which is interesting. It's just used 20 megahertz, and so that's why I'm partially limited on the speed that I've got, maybe because of my distance. So let's talk about some of the things that people want to know a little bit more that are maybe slightly more advanced that we've got in here, like VLANs, and then the option of different passwords. So the private pre-shared keys. So let's go and have a look at the private pre-shared keys first. This is where, like I said, we can have multiple passwords for the same SSID, but we do need to create different networks that they're going to join onto. So maybe first what we'll do is we'll look at some VLANs and some networks and some routing. So what are VLANs? VLANs are a way of connecting or cutting our network up into segments, and each one then has to route, and it's going to have a separate IP range, and we can do some level of control of who can see what on it. So we can create now a new VLAN if we wanted to. Let's call this wireless. Some people might do this for their cameras and something else like that. So again, we're using this the gateway as our router. It's chosen a subnet. I'm happy to leave that subnet as it is, and I'm not going to mess with that. Again, you could put content filtering onto this if you wanted to. So some networks could have content filtering on it. So I've now created a separate network segment. This separate network segment is protected from all of the others, if you like, and I can add now users to connect to that. So I can now go to my Wi-Fi network, all right, where we just have our single network name at this moment in time, and we can say, well, I actually want to use private pre-shared keys. So what do I want to do if we have a different password? So we've got our default one, which we had as a password of the Tech Geeks. All right. So add that. And then we're going to create a new one onto the wireless network I've just created. And I'm going to be called not the Tech Geeks. All right. So I've now got 2 networks with 2 different names. You'll see up here I've lost the ability to have a password for it. And I'm now going to choose apply changes. I've still got 1 network, and if I was on my phone, I've still got 1 network to view. Now, to make this work, let's just prove what we've got. So when we have a look at clients, we can have a look at clients here, and we can see that my device is on here, and I've got an IP address in here. So we can see my IP address, like I said, is 192.168.10 in the 10 range. So what I'm going to have to first do just on my mobile phone is I need to forget this wireless network, because otherwise it's going to log on with the same password that I had before. So just in my mobile phone, I'm just going to forget the password. All right, and then I'm going to browse for that network again. So when I browse for that network again, it should hopefully, let me just do this again. I'm just waiting for it to appear. All right, so I call this, I think it was not the Tech Geeks. See if I've got that password right. Give it a moment to join. No, so I didn't get the password right. So let me just go back to Wi-Fi networks and make sure I had typed this in. Oh, Wi-Fi here. All right, going to look at our passwords. What had I created for this one here? Oh, look, that's going to be Y, because I hadn't really created it very usefully, had I? So hopefully we can just edit this, view this, not the. Oh, dear me. The. All right, there we go. So you can see, don't always get this right. So we can choose this. We now save this, let it just update for a moment and apply the changes. Try and join my phone again. But we will take a moment. It's now joining that network by the looks of it. Hopefully, we'll just see that it's joining it now. So in a moment, when we actually look in clients, we should actually find my device will join with another IP address. Now, that's going to probably take us about 10 minutes to see that IP address change, because it's something called the ARP cache. This is cached in the device and is actually restricted. I can see it already showing on my mobile phone. And so later on, you'll actually, when we come back, you'll actually see that this has picked up a different physical IP address, and I'm in the 192.168 range. So nothing I can show you at the moment. We can go on and show you a little bit more of the advanced configuration of what we can now do. So we've now separated out these two networks. So this is great. So maybe you might have mobile devices or IoT things, some smart light bulbs and stuff. You might keep it on a separate network. You can also then rate limit that separate network, and you can again apply policies to it. What do you want to do? Maybe you've done this at home and you've chosen the kids network and you want to make sure that they can't consume all of the bandwidth. So we have options called profiles that we've had before. So settings here, and then profiles and Wi-Fi speed. So we can now create a new profile, and let's call this I'm just going to call this 1 MB, or let's call this 10 MBS. And I can rate limit the download and the upload. So now I've created a limit that whoever is on this Wi-Fi won't be able to get more than 10 megabits a second. So we can come here into Wi-Fi, choose our Wi-Fi, and we can scroll down. If we've got this on manual at the bottom, we can come down and choose Wi-Fi speed limit, and we can choose our policy. Now in this instance, what we have to bear in mind is we were using private pre-shared keys, so as a result our bandwidth limit is actually to that whole entire wireless network name. Now you could potentially get around this. You could maybe create a couple of different Wi-Fi names, and then you could have a different profile assigned to each one of them. So I'm just going to turn that off here. The other option is we could actually go to networks and we could look at our wireless. You see we've created multiple VLANs. So we can now go to profiles, and this time we could create a policy for an Ethernet port. It's a virtual Ethernet port. So we could call this wireless 10 megasecond if you like. And what's the port? Well, the port is actually this VLAN. And we could now manually limit the speed here. It's a little bit less control as you want. We can now limit this to maybe 10 meg a second. This sort of physically reduces the speed of that whole VLAN to 10 meg a second. So it's a potential another way round of doing it, but you may decide that the way you want to do this is actually do it and create another SSID. So that's really simple, and going into here like we've done before, and call this, guest or something like that if you want, guests, my password maybe you're going to use there, what network do you want it to be on, just on the default potentially, and in manual, now again, we can come down and choose a rate limit here, and we can set our rate limit to be 10 megasecond, and that means that everybody who connects to that one will only now get 10 meg a second of traffic. So it's another way round of doing it. So now we want to restrict how these networks see each other, and we can do that with inside security here. So we're going to go to traffic and firewall rules, and by default it will probably show you as simple. My suggestion is to move that to be advanced, and it will often list you all of the rules in place, and we can add new rules in, and some of this will be experimentation for you to see how this all actually goes. But I'm interested in the minute really in as our local in and out rules. So really what this is saying at the moment is this IP address range, which is our wireless network that we set up, all right, this can actually see anywhere. It can get out to the internet, but it can actually see anywhere as well, as we can see source and here and go to anywhere, which means that it can actually see all of the other IP addresses on this network, and there's no separation there in place. So on my phone, I'm just actually going to show you up in the screen here how this actually works. So I've just got a little ping running. Let me just clear this and start this going. So what's actually showing here is my mobile phone that you remember is connected to our wireless connection here. And actually has an IP address now that's updated 192.168.2.1.20, and our little test machine that we're using is on 192.168.10.130. So one is pinging the other, and obviously we might not want that to happen. We might want this to be private. This network here is our guests, and we don't want it to see this network. So we've gone to settings, and we've gone to security. We've gone to our traffic profiles, and we can see our rules are anywhere. Now, it's probably just easier to add new rules in than mess with some of the other ones, and it's going to be running in a priority list. So the one at the top is the one that's going to match first. So we're going to create a new entry, and it works you through this really pretty simply. So this is going to be LAN out is the simplest way, because it's coming from that local subnet trying to get to somewhere. And so maybe we're going to choose this called block local access or something like that. We're going to choose it to be drop all of the protocol. Where's the source? Well, we want the source to be just that one subnet, and that one subnet was in the group called wireless. All right, and then it asks you which subnet did you want to be in there, and it's the whole subnet. And then it says, where is it going to? Well, we wanted it to be blocked if it was going to the default network. So there's our default network in place there, and that's actually all that we need to do as our rule. So if we actually have a look at the top, or we actually see where this rule is in place, I'm just looking down at my phone to just see whether it is instigated. You can see it's just now, I put it up on the screen there for you. So basically in our LAN out rule, it's right there at the top. And so it's matching first, and it's saying this, drop the action. If you're coming from one of the LAN outs, all right, you match the network that we put, and you are going to anywhere, or the destination is actually the default LAN. So that's a little bit confusing because it has the word default there. You could have put the actual IPs in if you'd wanted to, but default is actually this network here. Then it's actually blocked. So let me just show you, if I just stop this on here and just do my phone on here now, and just show you that I can actually get out to the internet. So let's start that going. You can see that the phone can still get out to the internet, but it can't actually see the local network. So those two networks are now protected from each other. And you can use that for other rules, for internet in if you want to, but use that same policy, that way to do it. We can now create rules that protect those VLANs that we've created. So we've covered really being able to put rate limiting on both a wireless network and on a VLAN, but then I've also shown you how you can actually create rules that can block those bits to it. So if we now stay in security, Let's have just a quick look through some of the options that are in here as well that can add a level of additional security for your web browsing and your actual general usage. As we talk about security, we want to talk about security in a way of this is more about you and the information you are requesting from being on the LAN, the local area network side of this device, more than traffic coming from the internet. By default, it's blocking all the traffic that comes from the internet. All right, the rules are already in place here that talks about the internet coming in. Or I've put IPv6 isn't good. So internet in. All right, we've got stuff that is blocking all traffic by default. So this is now about how do we increase our security for things that we do because we click on things that we shouldn't do. So the general ones that we've got in here, all right, we can put country blocking on. This will be hit and miss because not every IP block in the world is assigned to the correct country. But if you want to do some blocking, you want to block people from being able to get to certain countries, devices in certain countries, then you can add that type of blocking in there. But like I said, it is a little bit more hit and miss, not about a Ubiquiti product. It's about how the world and the IP addresses work. You can turn on ad blocking. For which connection do you want ad blocking to be running? So maybe we'll turn that on in there. DNS Shield. So DNS Shield again is protecting the requests that are being made so that there's less likelihood of them being the false ones or the incorrect ones. So you could try that as well. So let's have our ad blocking turned on. Now our next one here is our intrusion prevention. What's intrusion prevention? Well, intrusion prevention here is about looking for things that aren't likely to be required for when you are moving around on the internet. So again, this might be something that you've clicked that is going to do something that it shouldn't do. That's slightly different from content filtering, which is more about web pages. This is about understanding files and things that are running on your computer that when they access it, it's not looking at what's on your computer, but looking as it travels through the internet. From the local side outwards, it's about what it sees in there that could be of a threat. So what do you want it to do? Do you want it to notify you or notify you and block? That's probably going to be a good one. What type of sensitivity do you want? You can customize this. So again, this is going to be, well, peer-to-peer is quite a regularly used communication protocol now. So you might want to allow that, but you want to stop Tor, you want to stop malware. Maybe there's some of these things that you want to stop and you can create a custom rule around it. I would suggest you start as medium, see how you go. If it blocks some stuff that you don't want it to, then maybe you'll need to customize it and take those categories out. It's already blocking known malicious IP addresses, so places you're trying to get to. This is not about stuff that's coming into you more, it's about stuff that you are going out to. Dark web blocker, things that you shouldn't be accessing in the dark web. And then your detection list allow, if you need some overrides in here, then you can add in some of the things like a destination, and you can put the IP address or a whole network if you want to in there. So intrusion prevention isn't about really your content filtering, your web pages you go to. It's more about the applications and what they're actually doing in there. Obviously, we've talked about firewall rules here already. Port forwarding is about allowing traffic into your network, allowing traffic into your network from the internet, and maybe rewriting it and adding that in. If you know a little bit, if you're needing to do port forwarding, you'll probably understand a little bit more of this. So those features are all in there as well, which is pretty good. As well. So we've looked at those types of things in here, our ad blocking, our DNS shield, and our intrusion prevention. Those are the main things that hit in here of what it does. That's those sort of the main contents on it. We did have some options here on our Wi-Fi network, I think it was, or our networks here that we could enable content filtering. So we can come back to manual here. All right, and it says what things on here. So safe mode for YouTube and search engines. If I was to search for a specific word, it will in fact filter out those images and that content in my search results as well. So it's actually quite good. You can override that when you go to the web page, but it is enforced as standard. So you can, by the looks of it, if you want to create it says here you can create a traffic rule to overcome this. Let's have a little look and see where we can do. So we can create some traffic rules by the looks of it here in Ubiquiti's in here and our traffic, and we can create some traffic rules in here. And those traffic rules, by the looks of it, if we go back and run that through, can give us the ability to exclude some of those items. So I'm just going to turn on our content filtering and make it family safe. It's a good starting point for us. And as it said there, if I go back in again I'll use the little pop-up bubble there and go to a traffic rule, I can create some options to get around. I can use the more advanced rule here. So internet in, internet out. What do I want to do? And I should be able to create some rules around this if I want to make the content filtering work. It's not like a true everything goes firewall, but it is give you some great starting features to give you some level of actual security that goes on. So we've just covered really some of the security things that are in here. We've looked at some of the speeds tests earlier in the video. We've looked at some of the firewall rules and how that actually works to make all of those bits work as well. So those are like a run through of a large lot of stuff that our customers ask us. How do we make all of this work? What are all the features that are in here? So most of the stuff is really going to be in those first few menus here of being able to look at your topology. All right, remember we're just looking at UniFi access here at the moment. UniFi network. All right, and we can obviously see how my device here is connected to the outdoor access point and how it routes to the internet. And we've got our control over everything else that's going on in here. You can see how good the internet connection is, the channels. This looks like it's maybe bonded at a faster number of channels now than it had before. When we first looked, it had only got a 20 megahertz. All right, so we can actually see now it's connected at 577 megasecond. So it shows you a lot of information, and hopefully that's given you a good guide around. This is looking at the UniFi network start of the app. All right, and then we'll go on now to, in due course, to have a look at Unifi Protect and adding a camera in there as well. Okay, so there's probably lots more I could cover in this, but I'm not going to I've probably blown some people away from what's in here already, as in, wow, there was more than I thought I needed to configure. Hopefully you've been able to pick out the simple bits, get this connected to the UniFi Cloud, create a user, and then get your basics for your network done and everything else like that. I'm going to add some more technical stuff on the end of this video, but I just want to walk you through now the next one. So we've done all of this, so we really can come back now, if you like, to our main console. We can see our Protect side of things is all updated, started and running. And so we're going to look at UniFi Protect now. I'm just going to add a camera. I'm not going to give you a big config of how to do all of this, but I just want to show you how we're going to get this camera in and added. All right, so we're going to follow the same processes that we did. It wants to give you a whole load of tuition of what's going on. We don't really need that. We first need to be able to go and get a device added in. So I'm going to go and do the same as we did with the access point, and we're going to add a camera in that we can then adopt to the system and then build it from there. Okay, so you'll see, let me just run this through, show you. We've just done this exactly the same way as I did the access point. Basically, we're taking the PoE injector. If you've got a PoE switch, which is probably more likely for cameras, that's maybe going to be plugged directly into your UCG-Max. I've taken a cable out. I've plugged it into the main, sorry. I've taken a cable out, you can see, and actually brought that into port 3. And then we've taken a cable out of the PoE side of the PoE injector and plugged that into our G5 Flex. And that's brought our camera, you can see the light on the front, online. So this is the same process, if you're very similar to the access points that we've had before. And we can see now that this device is here. Probably find that again, this is actually being used in a test environment. It's wanting to reassign this. So the only way to reassign it, as you can see, is actually to factory default this. So I'm just going to go and push the factory default on this, and what it'll then do is come back and show us it's got a new device ready to be configured, and we'll be able to add this in and get the basics of our Unifi Protect running. Alright, so I've pushed the button in and given that a factory default. Let's refresh the page. Here we go. So we've got a G5 Flex ready to adopt. We're following the similar process, as you can see, that we did before. And we want to enable smart detection. Smart detection, generally you have to have the device connected to the UniFi account. If you've only done local registration because you haven't wanted to connect it to their cloud, I don't think the smart detection is necessarily available. So really, look, there's not a lot in Protect to do. We can just do the basics while that's setting up. So going to settings, I like mine in 24-hour. Again, we're talking about updates, geofencing if you want to enable that, but probably not something you're going to do at this stage. Your updates and everything is set. Alerts, when do you want things to be alerted by? Do you want to have them pushed to your phone? So again, this now you want to get the Unifi Protect app and install it on your phone or your smart device, because that's going to give you the next bit of these bits that you want to be able to work so that you can remotely access this again. It's all linked. It'll still use your same account that you've already set up at unifi.ui.com, but it'll now allow you to see the Protect side of this and see the cameras. Then you've got your recording manager, and we can go through some of how this is done in a moment. So if we go to the dashboard, our dashboard is going to show us essentially all the cameras and everything else that's set up in here. I'm not going to probably give you a long run through this. I will show you some of the features in here. Look, it's giving you an idea of how many cameras you can have in here, and you can see that it says you can have about 4K. We're good for probably about 10 cameras quite happily in here, and it's giving us some more information over here if we want to do that. So this is sort of our dashboard, and as we get footage in here, you'll have some more footage put in. Similar to what we've seen and how we see it in the Unifi network side of things, we're going to have a set of our applications or our devices listed in the device manager here. We will need to wait for this to update, I think, as it's just going to reboot itself in a moment, and then we will be able to carry on. Here we go. So it's just connecting and getting itself going and online. So if we go back to the dashboard, it will actually probably show us this one lot of camera footage here that is quite contently looking at a whole load of new Ubiquiti stuff that we're waiting to reset. And then we can actually click on this if we want to, and we can make changes. We've got some other videos on some of the features that you can do on this. Your basic first settings one here gives you your name. What do you want it to actually do? This one has infrared on it. Do you want to show the status light, which you can turn on and off? You've got advanced options in here if you want to manage it locally. Some of these RTPS settings yourself. And then really the image tuning you can do in a number of ways, normally on the device. This sort of gets a little bit crazy because it always seems to want to put it at full screen, which is okay. I prefer it just down at this size, so you can hit escape. And this allows us to change the quality when you're playing back. We're allowed to hit on the this is going to put it full screen. It's in the new firmware it tends to do this. So we can now change the exposure, and we can change a few of the other features in here as well, which we saw in that previous menu. And advanced in here, we've got a few more bits of the brightness, flicker from the screen, and other bits and pieces that we might want to change in there as well. So this is sort of like that super easy, and depending on which camera you've got, you do have a whole load of extra features on there. And then the recording mode is probably the significant you want to have in. When do you want this to record? Well, we want it to record always. That doesn't mean it's recording always. If unless we have it on continuous. So continuous means we're going to be running a stream of footage all of the time, and we're going to record all of that. For most people, you're going to choose this to be events only. And then what do you want it to be able to do on here? You want it to be able to monitor. The great thing with this is it's actually, because it's recording all of the time, the UCG-Max is deciding when to delete the previous footage. So what do we want to have here is, what sort of number of seconds? Do we want 2 seconds of movement before we start to record? In this instance, we can't change this on this device. But how much do we want to record before the event? So I like to push this up probably to have as much as I can 10 seconds before, and I want at least 10 seconds afterwards, because I want some useful information around it for what caused the thing to trigger, not just the action itself. Record the events. Do I want to identify these as people and vehicles? Do I want to do anything with any sounds that I can hear, and what quality do I want to be able to do on here? And then your camera overlay, I normally have the camera and time on there. Then you've got the other features, and you have to do this for each camera, or you can do it once for your global setting. What are motion zones? So motion zones allow us to stretch out an area that we want to record in. All right, so if we only wanted to have, for instance, motion happening in an area just over here, we can just map that out to just be one specific area. And then if motion happens in any of the other ones, so in this instance we want it here, but we could see a tree moving here, it won't record with motion happening there. It'll only record in that section there. And we can do the same then for smart detections. Maybe we want vehicles, maybe we want a person, so we could highlight out the window. We only wanted to detect if there was a person actually at the window there. Or a crossing of a line, if somebody moves from one side, or an object moves from one portion upwards or downwards. So there's some quite good features that you can actually draw into that to actually make it work as you want to. And privacy, you can mark out areas that will not have any recording happening at it. That is really your main bit of what you do in here. And then in playback, if you like, is live, and a timeline of things that it notes, and you can play it back and again choose the individual cameras that you might have as you go along here. And then if you've got any detections of people and vehicles, there you go, you can see that those get highlighted and marked as you walk around. So those are the main features that you generally see in Protect. There's quite a lot more in there, but that's how you actually get it configured and working, and the start of those things to actually record and happen. So then you follow this whole process through if you want UniFi access or anything else that goes with it. But I've hopefully given you the basic setup tools for those standard 2 configurations to get Protect running in your first camera in, to get network running and get your first access point in, and then you repeat that pattern if you want extra cameras, you repeat that pattern if you want extra switches or everything else that goes with it as well. Okay, so as we start to bring this video to a close, one of the questions that we do get asked is what or how can we restore a previous backup? Maybe we've got some old USGs, the old security gateways, maybe we've got an old cloud key or a UDR or something like that. We want to restore it back from there. So look, there are going to be some things that you're going to have to redo a little bit. The key for me is that we're interested in the actual site and not the actual OS. Remember, we talked about that being the physical hardware and the actual operating system that runs all of that then allows all the different applications to run. I'm interested in the actual site, whether that be UniFi Network or UniFi Protect, and that's how I would restore it. So I've just come into this one here, which is actually a UDR, so a fairly similar setup that you might have. Do remember when we make the changes that it's going to bring back those settings that you previously had. Really on the UniFi network side of things, it's not going to change the actual console itself. It will change your networking, it will change your access points and your other bits and pieces like that. So I'm actually going to use this one. Come to System in here. So we've gone here to Settings, then we've gone to System, then we've gone to Backups, and we want to download the backup that's here. The backup that it's going to download We only need settings. If you want to bring all the log files across as well, then you're welcome to. Obviously, if you're doing this for Unifi Protect, then you'll probably want to bring all the footage over as well, and then download this file. We're looking basically for the ending to say, I think it's UNF or something like that at the end. So let's just see. There we go, UNF, and that's our file actually downloaded now. So that's my key. We're not going to do actually the whole operating system. So if we come back to our cloud gateway here and that we've set up and go to settings, in system for this, sorry, if we were on this one here, the actual OS, I'm not looking to try and restore the console settings in here, which you can bring a backup for. I'm not looking to do that in here or restore one in here. That would be a system, and that's not going to be compatible because that's the same as having a cloud key and trying to restore to a cloud key. This is a different device. So I'm interested now in going into my application, going into my Ubiquiti network, my UniFi network in this instance, and I can come down to settings for this, same place as the other one, going to system and backups, and now I'm going to choose my restore backup. So I drop that into downloads here. So let me download this or upload this now from the computer, and this is going to bring back the default site that I had before. So let's just restore this now and let this reconnect, and just give it a moment while it puts this into place. So like I said, this is not going to change our access to our console, so you really want to set your console up first. In this instance, it's the Cloud Gateway Max. We want to actually have that started up and everything. This is now the actual real settings for your network, your Wi-Fi access points and everything else. So we've just pushed those settings in there, and in a moment it's going to finish hopefully starting up, although it may change some of the config details for our network, underlying network as well, and the IP address of this device may change because obviously it's an inbuilt router as well. So we'll just give this a moment to get itself started. There we go, and let's go and have a little look inside here and see what it's actually restored for us. And it has actually brought this back as his network, as the network that I've restored. And if I go into devices here, I'm thinking that probably what I've done is probably lost access to this device now. So let me go back to our console here. Yeah, move this out of the way. Or maybe it's, yeah, let's just leave that there. All right, we probably can't actually go back around in this unit anymore. We might be able to. Let's just have a little look. Because what's actually happened is we've changed the actual IP address of the network. And so we want to go back and do our renew that we talked about before. We need to get ourselves the IP that was there previously in our previous config. So you can do this as your basic install, let it go onto the 192.168.1.1 IP range or 1.x IP range, and then restore your backup. That's probably how I would do it. I'd get this set up running separately. Then I'd log into our cloud key or whatever it is that you want to restore from. And you can actually see that this has picked up the network settings that we brought across as well. So we can now change this to 16.1. All right, and hopefully log in. And I would imagine it's going to want a username and password. So let me just go and grab those for a moment. All right, and it's probably the same things. Let's just see if we can find the one that we need. Now, I wouldn't have expected it to change the login details for the actual console itself. I'm just interested in the UniFi network side of things. Oh, great. Oh, it's because all right, let me just see if we can now, if that's logged in and online, whether we can now bring back our previous screen that I was running on, just so that you can do this a little bit easier. We can see this a little bit neater. And actually you can see that what's actually come back is these other access points. So let's just look. We can see these other access points have actually come back in. These ones are re-provisioning with the backup details that I actually put across here. And then if we had these actual access points online, then they would actually start to restore as well. And then they would pick up the config. And so everything that we've brought across, if we were to go into the Wi-Fi networks, we can see the name has changed in our Wi-Fi networks, and any of our networks that created are relevant still in here, but they have brought some of those settings across. So it is a fairly simple process. And one that I would probably follow that way around and do the sites. If I was going to do the same, I might go back now if I was in this customer, if I was doing it from this one here, and I may go back into something like this, and then from the system side of this, I can then download the backup file here for doing a migration, and then I can bring that one across into our cloud key over here. I can go into, again, Protect on this one, on this device, and go to our settings again, and then I could import the migration file, and I could bring all the config across from what we wanted to do there. And so it gives us several ways of being able to bring these bits and pieces and move them from one device to another, and hopefully gives that an idea of how I would go about it. That's an example on a UDR. It should be fairly simple if you do it on a cloud key or anything else along those lines, and then there will be a little bit of going through and making sure all the config is right. Okay, so I realized before I just signed off on this video that I actually said I'd show you how the failover or the load balancing works on this as well. I'm going to run it in this smaller window. This is me actually allowing to see how it was as if you were in front of the computer, because this way when we lose connection we'll actually still be able to see it all running. So I had to quickly reset this up. The key thing that we probably want to do to start with on here is you need to make sure that you have enabled this port and set up here as a secondary WAN before you go plug it in. If you plug it in first and there's a DHCP server on that network, you're going to bring your network down. So I've come into basically settings, internet, and we're going to use port 4. So I'm just going to go off quickly now and configure up or plug in physically port 4 to a different network that we've got. And then that will allow that to come online, and we can actually start and show the failover side of things to start with. Okay, so I've just plugged that cable in. It'll probably take a couple of minutes, although just as we said, if I started, you can see the second port has come up. It's only plugged into a 1 gig, which is why it is green. And now we've basically got this set as a failover. We can see that they're both up and ready to go. You can leave, as we talked about earlier in the video, automatic speed test on if you want to see how things are actually going. But you can see these have been assigned to completely separate IP addresses. So I guess what we're going to do now to demonstrate this working is we're going to just get a ping going. I'm probably just going to pop this, see if I can minimize this down very slightly down here. Is it going to let, oh no, rubbish. Is it just see if it's going to let me tidy this up. Maybe I can move it in from this side a little bit. Maybe I can move it to the side of this screen so it's just out of the way. Slightly. Obviously, if we wanted to do extra settings and things in here, we can do, but let's just put this back to this stage here. So really what I want to have running over on this side is a ping. So we're just going to get a ping running here to, with -T means it repeats, going up to Google. All right, and we can just move this off to the side very slightly. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to break the routing for this. So I'm just going to go into our network setup here on my phone. I'm not going to record this because it's not totally relevant to what you've actually seeing there. What we're just trying to emulate is a network going down. So basically these two ports, they're connected to a switch. The switch is connected to another switch, and then it's connected to a router. So 2 hops up, I'm just basically going to stop the routing from taking place on the primary connection. That's our one that's in blue. So I'm just literally going to turn that one down now. Let me just change the settings on this. and I'm just going to put that onto a completely different network here. Right, and save that. It will take a couple of seconds for that to take shape. And we will see in a moment, hopefully our ping here will actually drop off. And once that, it just says it's getting ready. Okay, it's made the change and our ping has dropped. So now what we're hoping for in a moment is that that second connection will realize now that it needs to come into action. And it will then start routing the traffic again. So let's just have a little look. I don't know whether it's going to take 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pings. It will take a little bit. Tests that I've normally done on this haven't been super fast. But obviously this is about it switching over. There we go. So that was probably, what, 20 seconds, something like that. And that's actually switched over and actually using the second port. So we can obviously then repeat that process if you like. What I can do now is I can go back into my setup and I can put this back into where it was before, which I'm doing now. It will probably tell us what the primary WAN is. If we were to go back here at the moment and refresh the page, it'll probably actually tell us what the primary WAN is. Running, here we go. We can see where the IPs are and what's going and what's utilizing. And it's probably, by the looks of it, slowly switching itself back. We can look at that box just down at the box here where it says WAN. 1 is unavailable, so it will take a few moments for that to actually realize that it's happening. There we go, we've got both that are back and active, and it should now slowly switch those sessions as they happen back over. And that's generally how we would actually see and make that work. So hopefully you can see that's hopefully a good way of that working, and hopefully not too much of a big add-on for you. You can do distributed again, would be another way of doing this. This balances across the two connections. Failover will still work. So if one fails, it will still now push all of the traffic over that other line. But this is another way of making use of both of the connections. So if you wanted to set it as distributed, you could balance it so that 50%, 50%, or 30%, 70%, depending on which was the weighted line or had the best options there for you. So hopefully that's been a good review. Pretty long video, but hopefully useful. There's some gold somewhere in there for you. Got plenty more other guides on our YouTube channel. So do head on over there, subscribe, and stay up to date.